I never thought that I set the tray down. Cornbread, still warm, sweet tea catching the window light, and that's when I heard it. "We were hoping you'd move out," Nia said, her tone light as chiffon. "For the baby's peace." I froze. Malcolm didn't look at me. His eyes shifted to the speckled tile floor, the same floor I'd stood on 31 years ago the day we bought this house. Nia glanced at him like he'd forgotten his line, then back at me with a smirk so subtle it barely touched her lips. But it touched something in me. My heart cracked. But my spine? My spine held firm. "Oh, honey," I said, smoothing my apron. "This is my house." The silence that followed wasn't loud. It was still, like when a storm holds its breath before it splits the sky. The kind of quiet that lets truth settle in the air. We were in my kitchen, Cascade Heights, Southwest Atlanta, September 18th, 2025. Light from the back porch slanted across the linoleum, caught the glass teapot, and sent a web of gold across the table. Nia stood by the sink, one hand on her belly like a prop, the other tapping her phone. Malcolm shifted in his seat. "It's just," he began, but let it hang. "Just what?" I asked. "We thought it'd be better if you had your own space," Nia said, "so the baby can have quiet. Routine. You know." I reached for my phone on the counter, heart pounding behind my ribs. When I pressed the side button, the screen lit up, still recording from the timer I'd started to track the oven. Voice memo, 1842, and counting. Her words were right there, clear as gospel. I didn't say a word about it, just slipped it in my cardigan pocket and turned back to them. "The deed's in my purse," I said, voice level. "House was paid off in 2019. Title's in my name. Shall I get it?" Nia's smirk slipped for the first time. A flicker of something, panic, maybe, crossed her face. She masked it quick, but I caught it. Malcolm opened his mouth, then closed it. Nia tried to laugh. "Of course. We didn't mean." But I had already turned, walked out the room. My knees trembled, but I didn't let it show. I didn't shout, I didn't cry, but I knew something had shifted, something deep. And I had it on record. That night, after they'd gone upstairs, and after I'd double-checked the front door lock, out of habit more than fear, I sat in my reading chair by the front window. The clock read 9:42 p.m., and the street outside hummed with crickets and porch lights. My house breathed quiet around me, the kind of quiet I earned. My name is Joyce Elaine Mercer. I was born in Savannah, but made Atlanta my own. Retired now. Used to work as a social worker for Fulton County. 32 years in and out of homes most folks pretended didn't exist. People think you harden doing that kind of work, but no. You learn to bend without breaking. I buried my husband Leon in 2013. I've raised one son, one boy I fed, clothed, stayed up nights with. One boy I backed through science fairs, asthma flares, and heartbreaks. And now that boy had sat silent while his wife tried to usher me out like a guest who overstayed the cookout. They think I'm harmless because I bake biscuits and speak in low tones, because I keep my hair pressed and my nails plain, because I sit with my crochet on Sundays and don't interrupt foolishness. But quiet isn't weak, it's watchful. It listens, it remembers. Above the fireplace, my father's military certificate caught the lamplight. Framed in wood, Leon carved himself back in, 97. Daddy fought in Korea, came back with a limp and a code. Always hold your ground. That frame has hung in every house I've ever lived in, every place I've made into a home. The title to this one? Signed over in June of 2019, when I finished the final payment. $215,000 total, paid in full. No liens! No mortgage, just me and these walls, held up by history and handled with care. The deed stays folded in the manila envelope tucked behind the cookbook in my hutch. I sat with all that, the name, the years, the paper trail, and felt something settle inside me. Not anger, not yet, just a quiet resolve. They don't know what I know, and they sure don't know who they're dealing with. Most mornings in Cascade Heights start the same way. I'm up before the sun, robe tied, slippers soft against the hardwood. I boil water for tea, never coffee. not since Leon passed, and while it steeps, I step onto the back porch to check my azaleas. They're fussy things, sensitive to shade and Georgia heat, but I've learned their rhythms. Pink ones along the fence, the whites under the kitchen window. I deadhead them with my fingertips, hum while I water, and speak kindly to the soil. It's my small ceremony, my way of holding time. After that, I read a psalm or two in the dining nook, light filtering through the lace curtains. Not out of fear, but gratitude. Psalm chapter 121 is my favorite. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. It steadies me. Then I tie my scarf, grab my tote, and walk down to Miss Ida Thomas's on the corner of Lyle and Aline. We've done that same walk, that same front porch sit for over 40 years. She's the one who held my hand at Leon's funeral, the one who brings me fig preserves from her cousin in Decatur every August. Our block has changed. New folks come with yoga mats and solar panels, call the street by the wrong name. But me and Miss Ida? We still know every crack in the sidewalk. We still remember when the Pruitts threw fish fries on Fridays and when the Evers boys mowed every lawn for $10. I've been the HOA block leader for 12 years running. My name is printed right there in every newsletter. Joyce E. Mercer, Community Liaison. I handle the quarterly potluck and the calls when someone leaves a sofa on the curb. Funny thing, Nia never joined a single meeting. Never waved from the porch. Not until she was pregnant did she come walking up my steps with that rehearsed sweetness and big belly, asking if I had lemon ginger tea. I brewed it, of course. That's what I do. But I marked the change. Like spring weeds. Some things bloom fast but don't root. I keep every utility bill filed by year in my office drawer. 12 years in my name paid on time. Every light, every warm bath, every cake I ever baked in that kitchen, that was mine. And I intend to keep it that way. I still remember the heat that day. June 7th, 2023. Sun so high it glazed the patio bricks and made the folding chairs sink into the lawn. We strung up lights in the dogwood trees and tied white ribbons to the old trellis Leon built back in, '89. I'd spent the whole week prepping. Bought fresh peaches from the farmer's stand off Campbellton Road, sliced them by hand, and baked 2 deep dish cobblers with a lattice crust so perfect even Miss Ida said it looked store-bought. I wore my best linen, the pale yellow one Malcolm said made me look like sunshine, and I opened my home wide. We had the reception in my backyard. My backyard. Not because they couldn't afford a venue, though they couldn't, but because I offered. Because I wanted them to start their marriage with blessing, not burden. I paid the caterer up front, left a deposit for the DJ, rented the tables, and fans. $6,800 in all. I didn't ask for it back. Didn't even mention it. Just smiled when Nia cried during her vows and called me Mama Joyce as she hugged me, peach juice still sweet on her lips. The photo of her and Malcolm under the trellis still hangs in their hallway. White dress, rented tux, my azaleas blooming behind them. Every time I see it now, something sours in my stomach. Because that day, I believed her. Believed her tears, her thanks, her bright-eyed promises. Pastor Rayford from Zion AME did the ceremony. He stood on my back porch, Bible in hand, sweat darkening his collar, speaking over them with that deep, warm voice of his. When he said, "Let no one put asunder what God has joined," I nodded like a fool. I thought I was welcoming a daughter. Instead, I was setting the stage for someone who'd one day look me in the eye and ask me to leave my own house for the baby's peace. That's betrayal you don't see coming. Not from someone who once called you mama and meant it, or made you think she did. Funny how easy it is to spend someone's love. Easier still when they give it, without keeping receipts. 2 days after that kitchen moment, after the peace talk, the voice memo, the quiet retreat, I sat at my dining room table with my old checkbook, a stack of crumpled receipts, and a calculator that still bore the sticker Malcolm put on it in college. Do the math, M.A. I did. And for the first time, I didn't round down or excuse the gaps. I traced every dollar I'd given them, every gift disguised as generosity, every transfer dressed up as love. It started with the baby shower, April 2024. I paid for the venue deposit at Cascade Commons, $1,100. That same week, Nia said her car needed tires and brakes. I'd ask my mom, she said, but she's got her own issues. I sent $500 through Zelle without hesitation. Later that summer, they came up short on rent. Just this once, Malcolm said, shamefaced, asking for $950. It wasn't just once. It was 3 more times before I started sending it preemptively to avoid the late notices they never acknowledged. I found screenshots of my transfers, some marked emergency and others simply love. I'd given $19,250 over 4 years, enough to remodel a kitchen or put a child through a decent community college. Instead, it went to diapers, down payments, dental cleanings, Uber rides, and, once, a weekend getaway to Savannah that they never told me about, but posted about freely. I kept every Bank South monthly statement, printed and boxed neatly by year. At the time, I told myself I was just being organized. Looking back, I think I knew one day I'd need a ledger not just for my bank, but for my soul. When I showed Nia the bundle of receipts I was sorting, just casually, not accusing, she laughed and said, "Well, I never asked for any of that. You just did it." Her voice was light, but the edge was there. The casual swipe of erasure, like my help, had been unsolicited noise. It landed heavy. That's when I started to see it differently. Not as support, but as silence. I'd been paying my way into their lives, hoping one day they'd treat me like family again. But all I'd really bought was distance wrapped in gratitude. And now the bill had come due. It was July when I first noticed the crib. I'd gone into the guest bedroom to retrieve a pattern from my sewing cabinet. Hadn't opened it in a while since the heat was making my fingers stiff, and instead of the quiet order I'd left behind, the room had transformed. The cabinet was gone, pushed into the hall without so much as a word. In its place stood a pale gray crib with a yellow knit blanket draped over the side. On the wall, someone had hung decals of cartoon elephants. Nia must have sensed me standing there too long, because she came up behind me with that rehearsed brightness. "We're nesting," she said, as if that made it all right. This room just made the most sense. Light comes in perfect in the mornings, and it's close to the bathroom. It's our space now. Our space. I said nothing at the time, just nodded, smiled, and backed out. I walked down the hall and went straight to the coat closet, where my old sewing supplies had been boxed up, haphazardly, without care. Fabric bundles crumpled, scissors tossed in with thread, bobbins rolling loose. The receipt for that cabinet from 1994 was still taped to the inside door. I had saved for it for 2 months, bought it from a little shop in East Point when Leon was still alive. It had been mine. That same week, I saw Nia post a photo on Facebook. The crib, the wall, the caption, #nestingvibes, followed by a row of hearts. No mention of the room's former life or whose house it was in, just a declaration of possession dressed up in hashtags. I let it go. Told myself the baby needed space, that sewing could wait, that maybe change wasn't theft if it came bundled in joy. But something inside me shifted. I began to understand that my silence wasn't protecting peace. It was permission. That every time I let something slide, I was teaching them how far they could go. And in that quiet moment, boxed in by forgotten spools and pride, I started counting the cost of my own compliance. It was a Thursday afternoon, early October, when I came back from my walk and noticed the unfamiliar car parked in front of the house. Not a neighbor's. Too new, too polished. I eased up the driveway and heard voices, low, businesslike, coming from the porch. As I turned the corner, I saw a man in a navy blazer holding a leather folder. Nia stood beside him, nodding like she was hosting a showing. Malcolm lingered near the steps, arms crossed, looking anywhere but at me. The man introduced himself before I could ask. "Devin Holmes, Metro Realty ATL," he said, handing me a card I didn't take. "We were just discussing market potential. Beautiful lot, strong bones, easily $420,000. Maybe more with a little staging." Staging? I looked at Malcolm, but it was Nia who spoke. "It's nothing serious," she said too quickly. "Just a soft estimate. We were dreaming a little, that's all. Everyone does it. Dreaming. On my porch. Of my house." I didn't raise my voice. Didn't ask them why a realtor knew more about my property than my own son seemed to. I just excused myself, walked back inside, and closed the front door behind me slowly enough for the sound to mean something. From the living room window, I watched them linger a minute longer. Devin gestured toward the roofline, the yard, the front windows. Nia leaned in as he spoke, nodding thoughtfully. Malcolm still said nothing. I sat down on the couch, same couch Leon and I picked out from Macy's Presidents Day sale in 2008, and let the cool of the room wash over me. The kind of chill that doesn't come from temperature but from clarity. They weren't just dreaming. They were planning. And it struck me then how quiet ambition can be. How easy it is to cloak audacity in charm and pretend it's harmless. But I saw it for what it was. A blueprint. A blueprint built on my silence, my name, my square footage. Devin Holmes left his business card on the porch railing. I picked it up later and slipped it between the pages of Psalm chapter 121. Not to forget, just to mark the turning. 4 days later, I was heading to the laundry room when I heard Nia's voice drifting down the hallway. She was on speakerphone, unaware I'd returned early from my errands. I paused just before the corner, quiet as the grave. "No, we haven't told her yet," she was saying, laughing softly. "But we'll have her in an apartment by Christmas. Malcolm's looking into that senior place over in East Point. You know, with the bus shuttle and the little garden patch. It'll be cute. Old folks love that stuff." Her cousin must have said something funny, because Nia cackled then, sharp, careless. Honestly, she doesn't need all that space. She barely uses half the house, just sits in that chair of hers reading the same Bible every morning like clockwork. My heart didn't pound, it didn't ache, it just cooled. A deep, steady drop like winter settling in before the trees even realize they've changed. I stood there with the detergent jug still in my hand, listening to my daughter-in-law plan my eviction like a holiday surprise. They weren't guessing, they were moving pieces, making plans without me, around me, over me. My name was still on every bill, every deed, every record. But in their minds, I was already gone. I backed away, slow, careful, picked up my second phone, the one I kept for emergencies and music playlists, and pressed record. A minute and 40 seconds later, I had her voice saved, labeled the file Christmas Plans, tucked it into the encrypted folder, right next to the scan of my property deed. That night, I sat on the porch with my tea and stared out over the yard, the twilight settling like dust over the grass. I thought about how easily people mistake age for fragility, silence for permission. Thought about how the same woman who once cried in my arms on her wedding day now spoke about me like a misdelivered package to be rerouted. Later that evening, I checked Nia's laptop. She'd left it open, Zillow still up, tabs labeled investment potential and cash out options. I took screenshots. Every one. Miss Ida had emailed earlier, a quiet little warning from the HOA, no unauthorized showings allowed. Good. Let the rules catch up. Let the paper trail begin. On the 10th of October, I sat Malcolm down at the kitchen table, the same table where he used to do math homework while I fried chicken and quizzed him on vocabulary words. The same table where he once asked if the tooth fairy could come on Saturdays. He wouldn't meet my eyes now, just kept tapping the edge of his phone, like he was bracing for bad weather. "I heard Nia on the phone," I said evenly. "Something about me being in an apartment by Christmas." He flinched. Barely. But it was there. That small twitch, that buried guilt. "She didn't mean it like that," he mumbled. "We're just thinking about what's best. For everyone." I looked at him. Really looked. The man my son had become was sitting in front of me, shrugging through betrayal like it was a logistical decision. His voice was tired, but not sorry, not truly, just careful. "What's best for everyone?" I repeated, letting the words settle between us like crumbs. "Does that include me?" He started to speak, but Nia came into the room before he could. She waved a hand, as if brushing off smoke. "Let her vent," she told him. "It'll pass." And just like that, I wasn't even a full person in the conversation anymore. Just an old woman with feelings to be waited out. Like bad weather. I rose from the table, every joint deliberate, walked to my room, closed the door, and sat in the dark. I opened my phone and scrolled through our family thread. 2 days earlier, they'd sent out invitations for the baby dedication. No envelope ever came to me. I zoomed in on the guest list attachment. My name wasn't on it. Later that evening, I caught a glimpse of Malcolm's phone, left carelessly on the arm of the couch. A text lit up. "Mom's tripping again. Don't worry." I stood over it, breath held. I didn't cry. I didn't break. I just took a photo of the screen. Evidence, plain and time-stamped. Sometimes silence is a grace. Other times, it's the last mask before the storm. And I was done wearing masks. By October 12th, the hush inside me had hardened into something else. Not rage. Rage burns too fast. No, this was denser, colder, like stone formed under pressure. That morning, I picked up the envelope from my locked hutch, the one labeled Title Plus Trust in Leon's handwriting, and carried it to my bedroom. I laid it flat across the quilt, smoothed its creases, and stared at my name printed in thick black ink across every page. Then I called Sheila Coleman. We'd met years ago when she helped Miss Ida settle her brother's estate, and I remembered how firm her voice had been when a cousin tried to claim what wasn't his. Coleman and Hunt Legal Group was just off Ralph David Abernathy, above a tax service and across from a florist. I liked that. Grounded. Accessible. Black-owned. "Mrs. Mercer," she said after I explained. "Would you like to come in for a consultation?" "No," I replied. "I'd like to come in for protection." That evening, I printed the estate planning checklist from her email. Ticked off the boxes I'd already covered. Deed secured, will updated in 2021, safe deposit key accounted for. Then I added a new note in my own handwriting, POA revocation, urgent. I didn't remember ever signing over power of attorney, but Malcolm had once mentioned helping with the taxes, and I'd been too trusting to check the fine print. I dug out the file folders from the locked drawer and placed them on the bed like weapons laid out for battle. Deed, birth certificates, my Social Security award letters, utility history, and bank statements. Everything with my name at the top, like a chorus of witnesses. The next day, I'd bring them to Sheila. Let her guide the legal steps, yes, but let it be known that I came with my armor ready. That night, I slept with the envelope beneath my pillow, like a talisman. Outside my window, Cascade Heights was quiet, but inside my chest, something had shifted. A threshold crossed. Malcolm thought I was overreacting. He didn't know I was just beginning. On October 13th, I stepped into the Bank South branch on Cascade Road, wearing my church shoes and carrying a zippered leather folio. I hadn't been inside since March, when I last withdrew cash for Malcolm's temporary emergency. The young teller greeted me with a practiced smile, but when Talisha appeared from the side desk, head wrapped in a neat scarf, eyes sharp as ever, she recognized me immediately. "Mrs. Mercer," she said, standing. "Come on back." We went to her office, where the carpet was the color of dried mustard, and the air smelled faintly of peppermint. I pulled out the folio, laid my Amex statement on the desk, and slid a pen across the surface. "I want to revoke all shared access," I said plainly. "Malcolm Mercer no longer has permission to use any card or account tied to my name." She nodded without a blink, took the paper, and tapped a few keys. "We'll close the joint credit line first," she said. "Then I'll walk you through the revocation for your Amex and remove him as an authorized user. You'll receive confirmation by mail in 7 to 10 days, but I'll print everything now for your record." As she worked, I glanced at the digital screen above her desk. Transactions flickered past like a confession. Uber Eats, Amazon, baby gear, something labeled, quote, prenatal float spa. The last one had declined. That must have been what triggered Nia's text, not 10 minutes after I left the bank. "Did your card decline or something? Need me to resend the number?" No greeting, no concern. Just assumption. I didn't respond. I just saved the message, labeled it entitlement, and moved on. By the time I left, I had a folder with signed revocation forms, a new debit card, and an updated password policy. Talisha even helped me lock my online banking with two-factor authentication and a security question Nia couldn't possibly guess. What was your father's first ship? The ride home was quiet, but inside I felt something unfurl. The first clean breath after months of holding it in. Not a fight. Not yet. But the tap? It was off. For good. October 14th. I took the flash drive out of the printer kiosk at Office Depot and held it like it weighed more than plastic should. I'd spent 3 hours in that store, methodically scanning every receipt, invoice, and check image from the last 5 years. Anything with Naya or Malcolm's name attached to it. Anything with mine. Every Zelle screenshot. Every Cash App confirmation. Every credit card statement. Color-coded. Labeled by year. Subtotaled by purpose. Housing. Medical. Childcare. Miskay. $24,510. 42 documents. 4.5 years. The clerk, a college student with long braids and chipped silver polish, looked at me with that familiar blend of pity and confusion. Do you need help with the binder setup, ma'am? I smiled gently, shaking my head. No, baby. I've got it. Back home, I punched holes in each sheet, slipped them into archival sleeves, and arranged them neatly in a black 3-ring binder. On the front, in gold marker, I wrote, Mercer Support Ledger. Not dramatic, not emotional, just factual. A record. A reckoning. As I worked, my phone buzzed. Voice note from Nia. We know what you've been saying. Not who I'd said it to. Not what exactly. Just a hissed warning wrapped in sugar. Her voice wasn't angry. It was aware. They'd started to feel the shift. Good. I forwarded the voice note to my backup email. Then I uploaded all the documents to cloud storage under a new account with a password only I would remember, an old nickname Leon used to call me that no one else had ever heard. I even sent a copy of the binder contents to myself, time-stamped and encrypted. By dusk, the binder sat square on my desk, flanked by a fresh pack of highlighters and a set of sticky notes. Tools, not decorations. I sat back and looked at it. This clean, undeniable ledger of care. Years of generosity quantified. Love, distilled into decimal points and paper. For once, the truth wasn't floating around in memory. It was pinned down, page by page, ready to speak when I needed it. And when the moment came, it would speak louder than I ever had. On October 16th, I called a meeting. Not a dramatic one. Not a come quick, something's wrong kind of gathering. Just 3 folding chairs set up in the church office at Zion AME, a carafe of coffee on the table, and a folder in my lap. Miss Ida arrived first, wearing her choir rehearsal sweater and carrying a notebook like she always did, even when she didn't plan to write a thing. Pastor Rayford came next, sleeves rolled to his elbows, eyes scanning me the way a man of faith does when he knows there's a storm forming but doesn't want to call it just yet. Sheila Coleman walked in last, briefcase in one hand, tablet in the other. I handed out the packets. The front page was titled, Cease and Desist Draft. Below it, a summary of all financial contributions to Malcolm and Nia since 2021. Next, a copy of the property deed, the current title, the revocation of any financial proxies, and the newly locked down accounts. Finally, the ledger. Pastor Rayford flipped slowly through the documents, nodding to himself. This isn't a family misunderstanding, he said finally. This is a campaign. Miss Ida leaned forward, peering over her glasses. Joyce, they're going to be mad. I know, I replied. They're going to call you everything but saved. I've been called worse. Sheila cleared her throat. You've done more prep than most clients. Everything is documented, time-stamped, cross-referenced. But if this escalates, are you ready for what it might look like? I'm past ready, I said. I'm overdue. We talked logistics, notice delivery, timelines, security protocols. Miss Ida volunteered to be my errand witness. Pastor Rayford offered church storage for any sensitive documents. The Women's Committee pledged support before I even asked. No one told me what I should feel. No one asked if I was sure. Because they knew. That evening, as the sun slid behind the church's stained glass windows, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Held. Not protected like a child, not rescued like a damsel, but recognized. Seen in my clarity, supported in my line in the sand. This was strategy. 2 days later, I handed Malcolm a letter he didn't want to touch. He and Naya were sitting on the living room sofa, baby blanket draped across the arm like a stage prop. The lights were on, but the mood was dim, tense in a way that made every tick of the wall clock feel louder than it should have. I placed the envelope between them. It was thick, cream-colored, and stamped in blue ink. Notarized delivery, Mercer residence. Malcolm hesitated. Naya snatched it instead, tore it open, and began to read. To Mrs. Nia Mercer and Mr. Malcolm Mercer. She read aloud, her voice tightening with every line. This letter serves as formal notice to vacate the guest suite of the property located at 3420 Lyle Avenue by no later than November 1st, 2025. You're evicting us? She hissed, eyes wide with disbelief. From your house? I corrected her, calm as polished steel. From my house. She crumpled the letter in her fist and threw it onto the floor. But not before I'd taken a photo of it, open and intact. My signed copy was already filed with Attorney Coleman and time-stamped by Officer Green, who had stood quietly on the porch earlier that afternoon as my neutral witness. No drama. No confrontation. Just documentation. Legal. Final. You're really doing this, Malcolm said, voice low. I looked at him, not in anger, but with the weariness of someone done chasing softness from stone. I asked for peace. You all asked for silence. There's a difference. Naya stood, jaw tight. You're going to regret this. No, I said, picking up the letter from the floor and smoothing its edges. What I regret is waiting this long. They stormed upstairs without another word. The sound of footsteps, drawers opening, doors shutting too hard. But I stayed planted, steady, grounded in something firmer than rage. The room was mine again, the house was mine. Not just in deed, but in authority. Boundaries don't always make noise. Sometimes they arrive in thick envelopes, notarized and cold as stone, and sometimes that's exactly what peace requires. The very next day, they tried to flip the script. It was Sunday morning, and the church fellowship hall buzzed with post-service chatter and casserole pans. I'd just placed a tray of deviled eggs on the refreshment table when I heard my name. Sharp, too loud for the room. Mrs. Mercer, Naya called sweetly, gripping Sister Calvin's arm like they were kin. We were hoping to speak with you in private, but there was nothing private about it. They'd chosen their stage well. Pastor Rayford's church, my church, with the whole women's committee present, punch in hand, and Deacon Lamar tuning the mic for announcements. They wanted an audience. We're concerned, Nia began, her voice trembling just enough. Joyce hasn't been herself lately. She's isolated, paranoid, saying things that aren't grounded in reality. Malcolm stood behind her, solemn like a pallbearer. He wouldn't look at me. She even accused us of trying to steal her house, Nia continued, voice cracking now. We just want what's best for her and the baby. The shift in the room was instant. Gasps, furrowed brows, whispers. Then Sister Calvin turned to me. Joyce, honey, are you all right? Before I could answer, Pastor Rayford stepped forward. Let her speak. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. Instead, I pulled a folded document from my purse and handed it to him. A certified mental competency evaluation from Dr. Carla Reed, stamped and signed 3 days ago. Clean bill of cognitive health. No signs of impairment. I'd booked it after Nia's "you're confused" comments started stacking like bad debt. Deacon Lamar, bless him, was already filming. His daughter had been helping him learn his phone camera settings. Sometimes divine timing looks like clumsy tech practice. Naya's face stiffened. Malcolm swallowed hard. Pastor Rayford read the document silently, then looked at them both. This woman baptized my son, taught Sunday school for 10 years, and handled our treasury books with more care than most accountants I've known. I suggest you tread lightly. Their show fizzled into stammering. Mine had only just begun, because this time I controlled the narrative, and I had the receipts to prove it. By Tuesday evening, October 22nd, the multipurpose room at Zion AME was set just like I'd asked. Rows of metal chairs, podium near the altar table, projector screen rolled down tight. We held quarterly stewardship meetings there every few months, but this one wasn't about tithes or fundraising goals. I'd sent invitations under the usual banner, Property and Legacy, a Family Testimony, but those who knew me read between the lines. I arrived early with my binder, flash drive, and a heart that no longer fluttered. Miss Ida helped set up the folding table with pitchers of water and a bowl of peppermint. Pastor Rayford gave me a nod from the back. His robe still hung from the hallway peg. Malcolm and Nia slipped in at 6:57 p.m., right before the opening prayer. Nia wore beige and carried that same smirk from my kitchen weeks before. Malcolm's face looked washed out, eyes darting from the slideshow setup to the packet waiting on each chair. At exactly 7 o'clock, I stood at the front. "Thank you all for coming," I began. "Tonight's presentation is called The Cost of Disrespect." A few chuckles, then quiet. I clicked to the first slide. It was the title page from my ledger, Mercer Support Ledger, 2021 to 2025, followed by slide after slide of screenshots, receipts, Zelle logs, and gift summaries. Each dollar labeled, every date cross-checked. I moved methodically, like a banker. No tremble, no vengeance, just truth. Then came photos. Wedding in the backyard, baby shower decor, the nursery transformation, realtor business card. I spoke of intentions, of assumed generosity, of silence mistaken for surrender. Halfway through, Nia whispered loudly to Malcolm, "She's about to embarrass herself." Without breaking stride, I advanced to the next slide, a photo of the notarized eviction letter, followed by the time-stamped message about the apartment plan. Laughter stopped. Whispers ceased. I paused. This isn't revenge. It's record-keeping. It's what happens when memory meets preparation. At the back, Attorney Coleman sat with a legal pad on her lap, watching every frame. The clock ticked past 7:40. Nobody moved, nobody left. Because what they expected was a plea. What they got was a reckoning, backed by paper, poised with grace. And the next move wasn't mine. At 8:04 p.m., with the congregation still hushed, and the final slide glowing behind me, final summary, $24,510, property intact, Sheila Coleman stood. No theatrics, no clearing of throat. She simply walked forward, heels soft against the linoleum, and faced the room like she'd done it 100 times before, in courtrooms and mediation offices across Fulton County. "My name is Sheila Coleman," she said, holding up a folder with brass clips. "And I represent Mrs. Joyce Mercer." She turned slightly toward Malcolm and Nia, without ever needing to raise her voice. "To be clear, Mrs. Mercer is of sound mind, full legal ownership, and has executed every action in this matter with precision and documentation. This folder contains all notarized materials, including a cease and desist notice, a formal eviction order, and revocation of any and all prior financial permissions." Malcolm shifted in his seat, like the air had thickened. Nia, for the first time in weeks, looked truly speechless. Her hands sat flat in her lap. The performative concern drained from her face. Sheila continued. "In addition, an irrevocable trust has been established. The home and its equity have been legally locked. This means no future sale, transfer, or refinancing can occur without trustee approval, of which neither of you are nor will be part." A collective murmur rose from the back. Miss Ida leaned over and patted Deacon Lamar's arm. Pastor Rayford simply bowed his head, as if in prayer or solemn relief. "Receipts matter," Sheila said finally, turning to me. "And so does memory." She handed me the folder with a faint nod. I held it with both hands. Weighty, yes, but not heavy. More like something settled. I looked toward my son. Malcolm's face was pale, jaw slack, hands limp. He wasn't angry, just undone. like a man watching a bridge burn that he thought would always be there to cross again. Nia stood abruptly. "This isn't over?" she hissed, low but clear enough for the front row to hear. "No," I said softly. "It's just closed." And when Sheila stepped back, I saw it in their eyes. Not fear, not yet, but the dawning understanding of consequence. And the end of entitlement. October 25th, the morning was bright. The kind of crisp Atlanta autumn that tastes like apple skin and chimney smoke. Inside the house, the silence was different. Not empty, not expectant. Whole. Their bedroom was clean now. Guest suite restored. Crib gone. Sewing cabinet returned. The smell of lemon oil hung in the air. I opened windows. I folded linens. I lit the sandalwood candle Leon used to tease me about. Said it made the house smell like a prayer. By mid-morning, Miss Ida arrived with a pitcher of sweet tea and a long, quiet hug. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. We sat on the porch, two old women with good posture and better memories, sipping peace like it was earned. Because it was. At 11:42 a.m., Nia's car pulled up, too fast. She didn't get out, just sat there in the driver's seat, engine running, staring at the new brass lock gleaming on the door. When she finally rolled down the window, she yelled something I didn't bother to parse. Threats lose their shape when they come from those with no standing. She drove off minutes later, tires too loud for the quiet block. I didn't flinch. I just held the new key in my palm, warm from sunlight, smooth with promise. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't triumph. It was restoration. As the breeze carried the scent of azaleas and tea, I sat back and whispered to no one in particular, "Now this is peace and quiet."